guys, it's Hades. So I wanted to share history through my eyes and the love of history that I have. And it started when I was 16 years old. Now, it started at the place that I am here today. This is going to be my first video because this is the place I was most passionate about when my love of history began. And it started with a school project. We had to come up with a school project, report, trifold board back in the day before PowerPoint. And this place holds a special place in my heart. Now, this is Andersonville. This is home of the National POW Museum, as well as the historic site of the stockade, and is still an active national cemetery. So this journey started for me when I was 16, and I watched a movie called Andersonville. Now, it was a fictionalized account of the events that happened here, and there were real characters in the movie, as well as fictionalized characters that were an amalgamation of some of the actual people that were here. When people think of prisoner of war camps during the Civil War, this was the most notorious. This is the one that people knew the most about, just because of the horrible conditions that took place here, and the national spotlight that it got afterwards. And now, this does have the POW Museum, which is behind me. However, I'm not going to show you the POW Museum because it's a heavy museum to walk through. And I will show you the outside, the facade of it, but I want you to understand more about Andersonville. The POW Museum is something you have to experience, and the whole place is something you have to experience. But as I take you along this journey, I want you to see why this place had such passion for me, and why, because of one person in that movie, my lifelong love of history started. Now, this is the outside. It was meant essentially be built like a gulag or a former prison camp. So I am out of the museum. I've seen the museum multiple times, but I wanted to share this with you guys. Usually filled with water, but it is a POW memorial. And you come out of the museum and you walk around and you see this. Like I said, I've been here multiple times before. However, there's something amazing about this place. If you've been to any Civil War battlefields or historic places, sometimes there's that feeling that you're never alone. Yeah, that's definitely one of those places you never feel alone. And I'm currently walking up to the stockade. That's what the stockade would look like from the outside. As you can see at the top, those are called pigeon roosts. Now, Andersonville was dedicated as a national cemetery in November of 1965. And Lincoln actually was the one who began to create national cemeteries with the understanding that these men had fought and died for their country, and they needed to be buried properly, and they needed to have the honor and recognition that it did. Now, the cemetery is about 3/4 of a mile away, and we'll get there in a little bit, but first, stockade. But I am currently standing in what was considered the deadline. This right here was called the deadline, and if Union POWs stepped over this or stepped under it, crossed it in any way, shape, or form, they would have been shot. Now, me show you. These are of what they lived under. Now, yes, these are small examples, and now at this time there was also a lot of holes being dug in the ground to escape the heat. Now, I'm out here in the middle of November, and as you can see, it is bright and sunny, and it is exceedingly warm for it to be the middle of November. Now, could you imagine being in this situation and knowing that at any second you could die? There was literally nothing stopping you from dying in this situation. And seeing Confederate guards watching you at all hours, knowing that there was the potential for you to die. There was never one account I've said there was no hope. So if you come out here, you'll also see square cement markers, and those are markers, especially on the interior of the stockade. Those are markers of wells that sprung out throughout time, because the only source of only source of water, I'm never going to say fresh water when it comes to Andersonville, was what they called the swamp, and it was built down from the Confederate camp. So there was never really fresh water. It's one of the main causes. Dysentery was one of the main causes of death. Scurvy. There was many other causes of death, but those were definitely the two biggest, along with diarrhea, things that we think of today as nothing. So you can also see this is a marker of where the deadline originally was, and then that was a marker of where the stockade was. These run the entire 26 acres of this area. It was originally 10 acres, then they expanded it in the summer of 1864 to being 26 acres. Now, we don't really think of 26 acres as a whole hell of a lot anymore, but in 1864, when this place was built, it was only designed for 10,000 prisoners. At the absolute height of its occupancy, it held 33,000. Over time, it was 46,000, but at its height in August of 1864, it was 33,000. Men on top of men on top of men, having no fresh source of food, no fresh source of water. Their food was usually cornmeal, and not that much to begin with. But it just, as I am literally standing in the middle of this field right now, I can tell you this place created a profound sense of never being alone when you're walking out here. And it just, you can walk completely across it. There's the only place that they really advise you to not walk is down by the swamp area, just because, just read the signs, but there's venomous snakes and stuff like that. But this is also not a place I advise to ever come in the middle of summer. If you know anything about Georgia, you know it gets exceedingly hot in the summertime, and from May to essentially October out here, you're at about 100% humidity. But let me show you. Now, there are monuments. There were monuments dedicated from each of the states. I'm trying to get out of the sun. Each of the states that had prisoners here had monuments dedicated here. And you don't have to walk this. That is completely up to you, but I prefer to walk it. It is quite a long walk. So, young kids, not advisable, but you can drive from where you park in the front of the military museum, and then travel down this road, which is what I'm going to do because I have walked this multiple times. So I'm going to go back, get my car, and then I will meet you guys at the gate. So see you then. driven down to the stockade entrance as well as Providence Springs. It's right next to each other. And it is also where the swamp is located. Now, this place was ridiculously huge, and it is a huge, just, it does this number and then this number, and then it's so ridiculous. So let's show you Providence Springs, and then we'll walk up to the stockade entrance. It's a perfect map of what it looked like. See how it dipped down in the middle down there? That is where the swamp is. That is currently right there. Now, Providence Springs is named such because it popped up during a lightning storm in the summer of 1864. And they called it God's divine well. Now, it might have just been a natural spring, as they are all over the place. You cannot drink the water. It's ill-advisable to do so. But let me show you some of the conditions. This is what the water looked like. Now, take this water and then make it 10 times dirtier. Now, this was one of the 3 sites that was chosen for potential camp. And one of the reasons, this is Providence Springs, but what I was saying was one of the reasons this site was chosen because there was less than 100 people living here. So this pavilion was created in 1901, and would cherish it all and malice towards none. Think about that. 52,000 men. We think about, you know, going to a baseball game and going to a stadium. That's a lot of people, especially people without having modern conveniences that we do now. No real POW during the Civil War had an easy time of it. There was no such thing. All the camps were heavily overcrowded. For either side, it wasn't a good idea. It was torture for a lot of these men. And here, escaped prisoners would be forced to wear a ball and chain, be put into stockades or stocks, and it created this sense of hopelessness for many of these men. And during this time, there also were, I took some pictures while I was in the POW museum, but there also were female prisoners that were here that were used as nurses and matrons and things of that sort. There is an undocumented female who is buried in the cemetery, but none of the graves, they're presuming she's in the unknown section because none of the graves have a male name with them, and that might have just been to protect her. There is undocumented accounts of a child being born here. We may never know. But now, that's about it here. Like I said, if you want to take this walk, it is a very heavy walk. It is a very profound walk. It is a hard walk. To walk all 26.5 acres. But now we're going to go over to the National Cemetery. burials still here a year. But you can tell the difference between the current active burials and the ones that happened after Andersonville was closed down. It's what it looks like. You see this, the tombstones are a lot closer together, and that was because a lot of these were mass graves. And Dorrance Atwater smuggled the list out because he knew the Confederates had no intention of giving the names to the Union. Well, the government didn't really want to have anything to do with it. The list was eventually published in a New York paper, and the effort that he put forward, he actually came down here with a very famous person who would go on to found the American Red Cross, and if you know who that is Miss Clara Barton. He came down here with her, and she gets a lot more credit than she deserves. And I know in the comments people were like, oh, she came down here to essentially write letters to the family to help them get some kind of closure, so they could understand, you know, what had happened to their family members. Now, Dorrance Atwater was really the hero of this. He wanted to make sure that everybody's name was accounted for. Now, there were some unknown soldiers, whether they didn't have foot tags, and also there were citizens buried here that died at Andersonville. So it wasn't just Union soldiers, and there were members of the 54th Massachusetts, the most famous of the African American units to fight during the Civil War. They were captured in South Carolina, and they were brought here. So Martin's grave is like way back here. They are in numerical order, but as I said, this is also an active cemetery, so if you come down here, just be respectful. And here we are. So like I said, I've known where this man's grave was since I found it, and here it is. Now, yes, I did do the research to find out where he was, and in the dead list, he was listed as Martin Blackman. He was a member of the Pennsylvania Company, and he was the 10,674 man to die here. Now, I know over time we've seen a lot of death, but look at this. Each one of those was a person. So one of the biggest myths that surrounds this place is that Captain Worse, who was the commander of Andersonville, was the only person tried for war crimes. No, he wasn't. He was just the most notorious, and according to his last words, he was simply following orders, and he paid the price for it, and now you're hanging me, as he put it. If you ever get a chance to come down here, please take this opportunity. It is a very heavy place. It is a very reverent place, and it will completely change your perspective on a lot of things. It only takes about an hour. I got here about an hour ago, so it doesn't take very long to go through the museum. Like I said, I've been here before, so I've done a lot of this before, but if you ever get the chance to come down here and see this, I highly recommend it. So for now, I will see you guys on my next episode, and I'll see you then. Bye, guys.